Chapter 1. Your emotions are not the enemy, the great misconception. We have been lied to about what it means to be strong. From a young age, many of us are taught that strength is a wall. We are told that the tough person is the one who doesn't cry, the one who doesn't feel fear, and the one who can suppress their anger until it disappears. We see images in movies of the silent hero who undergoes immense trauma and never flinches. We see the CEO who fires hundreds of people with a blank expression. We call this toughness. But this isn't toughness. It is a fragile mask. When you suppress an emotion, you aren't defeating it. You are burying it alive. And anything buried alive eventually claws its way back to the surface at the worst possible time. True mental toughness is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of it. Emotional intelligence, EQ, is the foundation upon which the house of mental toughness is built. You cannot have one without the other. Without EQ, toughness is just brittle aggression. Without toughness, EQ is just sensitivity without a backbone. In this chapter, we are going to dismantle the idea that your emotions are your enemies. We are going to learn that they are, in fact, the most sophisticated signaling system in the known universe. To become unshakable, you must first stop fighting your feelings and start decoding them. The biology of the surge. To understand why we feel the way we do, we have to look at the old brain, the amygdala. This tiny, almond-shaped part of your brain has one job: keep you alive. Millions of years ago, if you heard a rustle in the grass, your amygdala flooded your body with cortisol and adrenaline. It didn't ask you to reflect on the situation. It commanded you to run or fight. In the modern world, we rarely face saber-toothed tigers, but our amygdala hasn't caught up. Today, the rustle in the grass is a passive-aggressive email from your boss, a snarky comment from a partner, or a dip in your bank account. Your brain reacts the same way. It triggers a surge of emotion. The weak mind receives this surge and obeys it instantly. If the surge is anger, they yell. If the surge is fear, they hide. If the surge is shame, they shut down. They are slaves to their biology. High performers, the elite athletes, the special forces operators, the world-class entrepreneurs, experience the exact same surge. They feel the same dry mouth, the same racing heart, and the same flash of heat in their chest. The difference is that they have built a buffer zone between the feeling and the action. They don't see the emotion as a command. They see it as a notification on a phone screen. You can look at the notification without clicking the link. The high performers pause. Imagine a professional quarterback in the pocket. The defensive line has broken through. 300 pounds of muscle is charging at him with the intent to slam him into the turf. Every biological impulse in his body is screaming, "Run! Protect yourself!" If he obeys that emotion instantly, he throws a panicked interception. But the elite quarterback has trained his mental toughness to meet his emotional intelligence. He feels the fear, he'd be a fool not to, but he uses that fear to sharpen his focus. He observes the fear, acknowledges it, and then decides to stay in the pocket for one more second to make the winning throw. He didn't kill his fear. He channeled it. This is the core concept of this book. Feel it. Understand it. But never surrender to it. When you feel an emotion rising, the first step is to label it. I'm feeling a surge of anxiety. By labeling the emotion, you move the activity in your brain from the reactive amygdala to the logical prefrontal cortex. You literally shift the power from your animal brain to your human brain. You become an observer of your internal weather rather than the storm itself. Emotions as data, not directives. Think of your emotions like the dashboard of a high-performance car. If the low fuel light comes on, you don't get angry at the light. You don't try to smash the light or pretend it isn't there. That would be insane. The light is simply providing data. You need fuel. Our emotions are the same. Fear is data telling you that you value what is at stake. Anger is data telling you that a boundary has been crossed or an injustice has occurred. Sadness is data telling you that you have lost something of value. Guilt is data telling you that your actions haven't aligned with your values. When you view emotions as data, you remove their sting. You can say, "Okay, my anger is telling me that I feel disrespected. Now, what is the most strategic, mentally tough way to handle this? Should I lash out and lose my leverage, or should I address the boundary calmly? Weak minds are controlled by their data. They are like a car that turns left just because a light flickered on the dash. Strong minds interpret the data and keep their hands firmly on the steering wheel. The trap of suppression. Why do we try to be emotionally tough by suppressing? Because it's easier in the short term. It takes zero skill to bury an emotion. It takes immense skill to sit with a painful emotion, look it in the eye, and remain calm. Suppression leads to emotional leakage. Have you ever had a day where you were stressed at work, said nothing, kept a tough face, and then came home and snapped at your spouse over something tiny like a dirty dish? That is leakage. Because you didn't understand the emotion earlier, it waited until you were tired and then took control of your mouth. Mental toughness requires you to be honest with yourself. You have to be tough enough to admit, I'm scared right now, or this rejection really hurts. Only by acknowledging the truth can you begin to lead yourself through it. The roadmap forward. Throughout this book, we are going to build your capacity to handle the human surge. We will move through the pause, the internal audit, and the strategic response. You are going to learn that the most dangerous person in the room is not the one who is the loudest or the most aggressive. The most dangerous person is the one who is completely aware of their emotions, completely in control of their reactions, and utterly focused on their mission. As we move into Chapter 2, I want you to start practicing this one thing, the label. The next time you feel a surge, whether it's road rage, a sting of jealousy on social media, or a moment of panic, don't try to stop it. Just say to yourself, I am experiencing emotion. Don't judge it. Don't fight it. Just see it. By the end of this journey, you will not be a person who doesn't feel. You will be a person who cannot be shaken by what they feel. Feel it. Understand it. But never surrender to it. Summary of Chapter 1. The myth. Toughness is not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. The biology. Your amygdala reacts to modern stress like a prehistoric threat. You must bridge the gap to your logical brain. The high performer. They feel the same fear, anger as others but refuse to let it dictate their actions. The tool, labeling your emotions, shifts power from your animal brain to your strategic brain. The mantra, feel it, understand it, but never surrender to it. Chapter 2, stop reacting, start observing. The destructive velocity of reaction. Most of the profound regrets in human history can be traced back to a single, unguarded second. Think about the last time you truly regretted something you said or did. Perhaps it was a scathing remark hurled at a spouse in the heat of an argument. Perhaps it was an impulsive, angry email sent to a boss that burned a bridge you spent years building. Perhaps it was a financial decision made out of pure panic when the market dipped. In every one of those instances, there was a common denominator, reaction. Reaction is a high-velocity, low-intelligence process. It is the shortest distance between a feeling and a mistake. When we react, we are essentially letting our primitive instincts take the wheel of a high-performance vehicle. The results are almost always catastrophic. Relationships that took decades to build can be dismantled in 10 seconds of unbridled rage. Careers that required immense sacrifice can be derailed by one moment of defensive ego. Emotional intelligence, EQ, doesn't mean you stop having these impulses. It means you stop being a slave to their velocity. Mental toughness is the strength required to stand in the middle of an emotional storm and refuse to be moved by it. This chapter is about the most important skill you will ever develop, the power of the pause. The biology of the amygdala hijack. To stop reacting, we must understand what is happening inside our skulls. As we touched on in Chapter 1, your brain is a layered organ. At the base is the lizard brain or the limbic system, specifically the amygdala. This part of the brain doesn't think in terms of logic, long-term goals, or reputation. It thinks in terms of survival. When you perceive a threat, whether it's a physical predator or a social slight, the amygdala triggers what psychologists call an amygdala hijack. It floods your system with adrenaline and cortisol. It shuts down the blood flow to your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thinking, planning, and moral judgment. In this state, you are literally, biologically, less intelligent. You are incapable of seeing the big picture. You are in a fight, flight, or freeze state. This is why, 5 minutes after a heated argument, you suddenly think of the perfect, calm thing you should have said. Your prefrontal cortex has finally come back online. The hijack is over. The goal of mental toughness is to prevent the hijack from happening in the first place, or at the very least, to shorten its duration. The 3-second mental gap. The difference between a victim of circumstance and a master of self is exactly 3 seconds. Between the moment you feel the sting of an emotion and the moment you open your mouth to speak, there is a gap. For most people, that gap is non-existent. They are stimulus response machines. You poke them, they bark. High performers, however, have learned to widen that gap. They have practiced the 3-second rule. When a trigger occurs, someone cuts you off in traffic, a client insults your work, or your partner brings up a sensitive topic, your first job is not to fix the situation. Your first job is to do nothing. For 3 seconds, you simply breathe. In those 3 seconds, the biological wave of the emotion peaks and begins to subside. You allow the blood to stay in your prefrontal cortex. You remind yourself, I am currently being triggered. My brain is trying to hijack me. I will not allow it. In those 3 seconds, you move from the participant in the drama to the observer of the drama. The art of observation. What does it mean to observe rather than react? Imagine you are standing on a train platform. A fast-moving express train represents an emotion. Let's say, anger. The reactor sees the train coming and jumps onto the tracks, trying to stop it with their bare hands. They get crushed. They are in the emotion. They are the anger. The observer stands on the platform. They see the train. They hear the roar. They feel the wind as it rushes past. But they stay on the platform. They watch the train enter the station, and they watch it leave. They recognize, there goes the anger train. It's a loud one. It's a fast one. But I'm not on it. Observation creates distance. And distance creates clarity. When you observe your emotions, you describe them objectively. Instead of saying, I'm furious, you say, I'm noticing a sensation of heat in my chest and a tightening in my jaw. Instead of saying, I am a failure, you say, I am experiencing a thought that suggests I have failed. This linguistic shift is a tool of mental toughness. It detaches yourself from the sensation. Once you are an observer, the emotion loses its authority over you. You can look at the anger and say, I see you. You're trying to protect me, but you're not helpful right now. Stay on the platform. The cost of reaction. Real-world consequences. Let's look at how reaction destroys and how observation saves in 3 critical areas of life. 1. Professional reputation. Consider 2 executives, Sarah and Mark. Both receive a public critique from the CEO during a board meeting. Mark is a reactor. He feels the sting of embarrassment, an emotion, and immediately defends himself. He interrupts the CEO, blames his team, and gets visibly red in the face. To the board, Mark looks unstable, defensive, and unpromotable. He reacted to protect his ego, but he destroyed his reputation. Sarah is an observer. She feels the exact same sting of embarrassment, but she employs the 3-second gap. She observes her heart rate increase. She stays silent, listens, and takes a breath. Then, she responds, that's a valid point. I'll take that back to the team so we can refine our approach. To the board, Sarah looks like a leader. She looks unshakable. She used the power of the pause to maintain her leverage. 2. Personal relationships. Think about the slow burn of a long-term relationship. Many couples fall into a pattern of reactive loops. One person says something slightly critical. The other person reacts with a counterstrike. Before they know it, they are arguing about something that happened 3 years ago. Observation breaks the loop. When your partner says something that hurts, if you can observe the hurt instead of reacting with a counterattack, you gain the ability to say, hey, that comment actually hurt my feelings. Can we talk about that? This leads to resolution. Reaction leads to escalation. 3. Personal wealth and decision-making. The stock market is a giant machine designed to transfer money from the reactors to the observers. When the market crashes, The reactors feel fear and sell at the bottom. The observers see the fear in the market, observe their own anxiety, but stick to their long-term strategy. They stay calm when the world is panicking, and they reap the rewards. Training the pause muscle. You cannot wait for a crisis to practice the 3-second gap. You must train it in the small, mundane moments of life. Mental toughness is built in the low-stakes environments so it can be deployed in the high-stakes ones. Exercise 1. The minor inconvenience. The next time you are in a long line at the grocery store or stuck at a red light when you're in a hurry, observe your reaction. Feel the impatience rising. Instead of huffing, checking your watch, or getting frustrated, just watch the feeling. Say to yourself, "This is impatience. It's a physical sensation. I'm choosing to stay on the platform." Exercise 2. The digital delay. Never respond to a text or email that makes you feel a strong emotion, positive or negative, immediately. Set a rule: 10 minutes of observation for every 1 minute of feeling. If you get an angry email, read it, then step away. Observe the need to fire back. Watch that need until it begins to fade. Only when you are back in your prefrontal cortex should you type a response. Exercise 3. Box breathing. When the hijack starts, use your body to signal your brain. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. This physical act forces your nervous system out of fight or flight and back into rest and digest. It is the manual override for the 3-second gap. The identity of the non-reactive man-woman. There is a unique kind of dignity that comes from being non-reactive. When people realize they cannot get a rise out of you, their respect for you skyrockets. When they see that you are the one who stays calm when the ship is sinking, they naturally want to follow you. Reaction is cheap. Anyone can yell. Anyone can get defensive. Anyone can quit when things get hard. But to observe, to stay still when your biology is screaming for you to move, that is the mark of a truly tough mind. As we move forward, remember that your goal is not to become a robot. Your goal is to become the commander. A commander listens to his scouts' emotions, but he makes the final decision based on the mission, not the scout's excitement. Stop being a participant in every drama that comes your way. Start being the observer who decides which battles are worth fighting. Pause. Think. Then respond. Summary of Chapter 2. The problem. Reaction is the shortest path to regret. It is driven by the primitive amygdala. The hijack. In an emotional state, you are biologically less intelligent. You must wait for your logical brain to reconnect. The solution. The 3-second mental gap. Do nothing until the biological wave begins to subside. The metaphor. Stay on the platform. Don't jump on the emotion train. The practice. Train on minor inconveniences to prepare for major crises. The mantra. Pause. Think. Then respond. Chapter 3. The silent strength of emotional control. The invisible hierarchy. In every room, in every board meeting, and in every heated family argument, an invisible hierarchy is being established. It has nothing to do with who has the loudest voice, the most expensive suit, or the highest title. This hierarchy is determined by a single factor: emotional control. We are biologically wired to look for a leader. In moments of stress, uncertainty, or crisis, the human brain scans the environment for an anchor. We look for the person who is not panicking. We look for the person whose breathing is steady, whose voice is modulated, and whose eyes are clear. In the animal kingdom, the alpha is often the most physically aggressive. But in the world of high-performing humans, the alpha is the person who remains calm while everyone else is losing their minds. This is the silent strength. When you maintain emotional control, you don't have to demand authority. It is granted to you by everyone else in the room. This chapter is about understanding that composure is not just a polite social grace, it is a weapon of influence. It is the ability to hold your ground when the world is trying to pull you into its chaos. The mirror effect, dictating the temperature. To master emotional control, you must understand a psychological phenomenon known as emotional contagion. Humans have mirror neurons in their brains. These neurons are designed to help us empathize and bond by mimicking the emotions and behaviors of those around us. If someone walks into a room radiating high-level anxiety, the people around them will subconsciously begin to feel their own cortisol levels rise. If someone starts yelling, the natural biological impulse of the other person is to yell back. Most people are thermometers. They merely reflect the temperature of the room. If the room is angry, they become angry. If the room is panicked, they become panicked. A mentally tough person with high emotional intelligence is a thermostat. They don't reflect the temperature, they set it. When someone approaches you with aggression, and you respond with calm, steady composure, you create a psychological mismatch. Their brain expects a fight-or-flight response. When they don't get it, they experience a moment of confusion. If you remain calm long enough, their mirror neurons will eventually begin to sync with yours. You literally force their nervous system to settle down to match your level. The calmer you stay, the more power you hold over the environment. The poker face versus the calm face. There is a common misunderstanding that emotional control means having a poker face, a blank, wooden expression that reveals nothing. While a poker face has its uses in gambling, in leadership, and life, it often creates a wall that prevents trust. True emotional control is the calm face. It is the expression of someone who is fully present, fully aware, but completely unruffled. It is the look of a pilot during turbulence. They aren't hiding their emotions, they have mastered them. Think about a high-stakes negotiation. Let's say you are selling a business or negotiating a salary. The other party makes a lowball offer that is borderline insulting. The reactor scoffs, gets defensive, or expresses outrage. They have just revealed their hand. They have shown that they are emotionally invested and can be tilted. The controlled individual simply pauses. They look the other person in the eye. They might even tilt their head slightly in curiosity. They say nothing. In that silence, the power shifts entirely to the person who is calm. The person who made the insulting offer begins to feel uncomfortable. They start to wonder if they went too far. They might even start bidding against themselves just to break the tension. By controlling your emotional response to an insult, you have turned their tactic into your leverage. The calmest person in the room always wins. Why does the calmest person win? Because they have the most data. When you are emotional, your field of vision narrows. You suffer from tunnel vision. You are so focused on the perceived threat or the insult that you miss the opportunities, the nuances, and the exits. The calm person, however, has a wide-angle lens. Because they aren't wasting energy on an internal fire, they can observe the other person's body language. They can hear what is not being said. They can spot the weaknesses in an opponent's argument or the desperation in a competitor's eyes. Consider the world of elite sports. In the final minutes of a championship game, every player is physically gifted. But the one who wins is the one who can keep their heart rate low enough to think clearly. While the opponent is rushing, making unforced errors driven by adrenaline, the calm player is surgical. They are playing the game while the other person is playing the emotion. Handling verbal attacks and conflict. Nothing tests emotional control like a direct verbal attack. Whether it's a troll on the internet, a disgruntled co-worker, or an angry family member, the goal of an attack is almost always to provoke a reaction. When someone attacks you, they are trying to hook you. They want to pull you down into their mud because they know they can beat you there. If you get angry, they win, not because they are right, but because they have successfully controlled your state of mind. The mentally tough response to an attack is non-resistance. Imagine someone yells at you. You have no idea what you're doing. This project is a disaster because of you. The weak mind reacts, how dare you? I worked harder than anyone. You're the one who missed the deadline. Now, you are both in the mud. The controlled mind responds, I can see you're frustrated. Let's look at the data and see where the disconnect happened. By refusing to take the bait, you leave the hook hanging in mid-air. You remain on the high ground. More importantly, to any onlookers, you look like the adult in the room, and the attacker looks like a petulant child. Your silence or your measured response is a mirror that reflects their own instability back at them. The cost of losing your cool. To truly value emotional control, you must recognize the tax of outrage. Every time you lose your temper, you pay a tax. The reputation tax, People may forgive you, but they never forget the time you lost it. They will always hold a small reservation about your ability to handle pressure. The energy tax. A 5-minute blow-up can leave you physically and mentally exhausted for 5 hours. The adrenaline crash is real, and it kills your productivity. The relationship tax. Harsh words spoken in anger create scar tissue. You can apologize, but the scar remains. When you realize how expensive it is to be reactive, you start to see emotional control as a form of wealth management. You are protecting your most valuable assets, your peace, your focus, and your character. Practical techniques for instant composure. Emotional control is a skill that can be practiced. Here are 3 methods to maintain the silent strength when the pressure rises. 1. The physical anchor. When you feel a surge of emotion, find a physical sensation to anchor yourself to the present moment. Press your feet firmly into the floor. Feel the texture of the pen in your hand. Notice the weight of your body in the chair. By focusing on a physical sensation, you ground the emotional electricity before it reaches your mouth. 2. The third-person narrative. In your mind, describe the situation as if you were a narrator in a movie. I am watching a man yell at me. I am noticing my heart rate increasing. I am choosing to wait before speaking. This creates the distance we talked about in Chapter 2, but it adds a layer of objective analysis. 3. Low-velocity speech. When you are under pressure, your instinct is to speak faster and at a higher pitch. This signals to your brain and everyone else that you are in flight mode. Deliberately slow down your speech. Lower your pitch. Use pauses. By controlling the velocity of your communication, you trick your nervous system into a state of calm. The power of being unflappable. There is a word for the person who cannot be easily moved: unflappable. To be unflappable is the ultimate expression of mental toughness and emotional intelligence. It means you have reached a level of internal security where external events no longer have a remote control to your feelings. You become the person who can hear bad news and say, "Okay, let's look at our options." You become the person who can walk through a chaotic environment and bring a sense of order just by your presence. This silent strength is not about being soft. It is about being so strong that you don't need to show it. It is the strength of the mountain, not the noise of the wind. As we move forward, carry this mantra with you. When things get loud, get quiet. When things get fast, get slow. When everyone else is reacting, be the one who controls the room by controlling themselves. The calmer you stay, the more power you hold. Summary of Chapter 3. The invisible hierarchy. Authority is naturally given to the person with the most emotional control. The thermostat versus the thermometer. Don't reflect the room's energy, dictate it through your own composure. Negotiation power. Silence and a calm face are superior to aggression in high-stakes situations. The mirror effect. Your calm will eventually force others to de-escalate. The tax of outrage. Losing your cool costs you reputation, energy, and trust. The practice. Use physical anchors and low-velocity speech to maintain control. The mantra. The calmer you stay, the more power you hold. Chapter 4. The discipline of self-awareness. The black box of the human mind. Imagine a pilot flying a high-performance jet through a thick fog. To survive, the pilot cannot rely on their eyes. They must rely on the instrument panel. They need to know the altitude, the fuel levels, the engine temperature, and the wind speed. If the pilot ignores the instruments, or worse, if the instruments are broken and the pilot doesn't know it, a crash is inevitable. Most people are flying the jet of their lives through the fog of daily stress without ever looking at their instrument panel. They have no idea what their internal fuel levels are. They don't notice when their emotional engine is overheating until smoke is pouring out of the cockpit. This is the tragedy of the unexamined life. We call it emotional autopilot. Emotional intelligence and mental toughness are impossible without the discipline of self-awareness. You cannot control an emotion you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot lead a self you do not know. Self-awareness is the forensic study of your own mind. It is the process of shining a light into the dark corners of your psyche to understand why you do what you do. If you skip this step, all the mental toughness in the world is just a hollow shell. To be truly unshakable, you must first become a master of your own internal data. The autopilot trap. Why we repeat our mistakes. Have you ever wondered why you seem to have the same argument with your partner over and over again? Or why you always feel a certain dip in motivation every Tuesday afternoon? Or why a specific type of person, perhaps someone who is slightly arrogant or overly critical, always seems to get under your skin in seconds? Most people believe these reactions are caused by the outside world. They think, I am angry because he was rude, or I am stressed because the job is hard. But the truth is more uncomfortable. The outside world is merely the finger that presses the button. The button was already there. Living on autopilot means you are a collection of pre-programmed scripts. When event A happens, you perform reaction B. You have been doing this for so long, perhaps since childhood, that you no longer see it as a choice. You see it as just the way I am. Mental toughness begins the moment you stop saying that's just the way I am and start asking, why am I reacting this way? Self-awareness is the bridge from being a biological machine to being a conscious creator of your character. The anatomy of a trigger. In the world of psychology and performance, a trigger is a specific stimulus that sparks an intense, often disproportionate, emotional reaction. Triggers are like emotional landmines buried in your subconscious. You're walking along, minding your own business, when someone says something that sounds like a criticism of your intelligence. Boom! Suddenly, you are defensive, your heart is racing, and you are ready for war. Where do these landmines come from? They are usually built out of past insecurities, wounds, or ego attachments. If you grew up in a household where you felt unheard, your trigger might be being ignored. If you once failed publicly and felt deep shame, your trigger might be being questioned. If you feel insecure about your status, your trigger might be someone else's success. The mentally tough person is not someone who has no landmines. They are someone who has mapped their entire minefield. They know exactly where the triggers are. Because they know where they are, they don't step on them. And even if someone else tries to jump on one to hurt them, the mentally tough person sees it coming and says, I see what you're trying to do. That button doesn't work anymore. Know your triggers, or they will control you. The why behind the what. To develop the discipline of self-awareness, you must become a detective. When an emotion surges, don't just experience the what, the anger, the fear, the jealousy. Dig for the why. Let's say you are in a meeting and a colleague suggests a different way to handle your project. You feel a flash of white-hot resentment. The autopilot response. You dismiss their idea and point out a flaw in their work. Reaction. The self-aware response. You notice the resentment. You ask yourself, why did that bother me so much? The first layer. I'm annoyed because they're overstepping. The second layer. Actually, I'm worried their idea might be better than mine. The root cause. I'm afraid that if I'm not the smartest person in the room, I have no value. That is the breakthrough. Once you realize the anger isn't about the colleague, but about your own insecurity regarding your value, the anger loses its power. You can now choose a mentally tough response. That's an interesting perspective. Let's look at how we can integrate that. When you find the root, the branches of the emotional reaction wither away. The mirror of truth. Practical tools for awareness. Self-awareness doesn't happen by accident. It is a discipline that must be practiced daily. Here are the 3 most effective tools for building your internal instrument panel. 1. The forensic journal. This is not a dear diary where you vent your feelings. This is a logbook for a high-performance machine. At the end of each day, spend 5 minutes reviewing your emotional spikes. When did I lose my cool today? What was the specific sentence or event that triggered it? What was the physical sensation in my body? What was the lie I told myself in that moment? E.g., they don't respect me, or I'm going to lose everything. By writing this down, you move the data from your hidden subconscious to your visible conscious mind. Patterns will emerge. You will realize that you aren't unpredictable, you are actually very predictable. And once you are predictable, you are manageable. 2. The 5 Why technique. Borrowed from the world of industrial manufacturing, Toyota. This is a simple way to get to the root of an emotional reaction. When you feel a strong emotion, ask why. 5 times in a row. Why am I angry? Because he was late. Why does him being late bother me? Because it's disrespectful of my time. Why do I feel disrespected? Because I feel like I'm not a priority to him. Why is it important that I am his top priority? Because I'm feeling insecure in this relationship. Why am I feeling insecure? Because I haven't been communicating my needs. Now you have something you can actually work on. You've moved from he is the problem to I have a communication task. 3. Radical feedback, the blind spot check. No matter how self-aware we think we are, we all have blind spots, behaviors that everyone else can see, but we can't. To be mentally tough, you must have the courage to ask for the truth. Find a person you trust, a mentor, a spouse, or a colleague, and ask them, what is one emotional reaction I have that consistently holds me back? Then, and this is the mental toughness part, do not defend yourself. Just listen. Their perspective is the mirror you cannot hold for yourself. The shift from victim to architect. Most people live as victims of their emotions. They say, I had a bad day because X happened. They are like a leaf blown by the wind. Self-awareness changes your identity. You stop being the leaf and start being the architect. You realize that while you cannot control the wind, the events of life, you can control the structure of the house, your mind. When you know your triggers, you can pre-program your responses. You can say, I know that when I am tired, I tend to get snappy with my kids. Therefore, when I come home from a long day, I will take 5 minutes of silence in the car before walking through the door. This is not suppression. This is strategic self-management. You are using your intelligence to outmaneuver your own primitive impulses. The silence of self-knowledge. There is a profound quietness that comes with deep self-awareness. When you truly know yourself, your shadows, your fears, your strengths, and your triggers, the world loses its ability to rattle you. Insults don't land as hard because you already know your flaws. Praise doesn't go to your head because you already know your worth. You become a closed-loop system. You are no longer scanning the environment for clues on how you should feel. You look at your internal instrument panel, you see the data, and you fly the plane. As we move toward Chapter 5, where we will discuss training the mind to stay unshaken, remember that you cannot train what you do not understand. You must do the dirty work of self-examination first. Take the flashlight. Look into the dark corners. Map the minefield. Know your triggers, or they will control you. Summary of Chapter 4. The concept. Self-awareness is the instrument panel for the jet of your life. Without it, you are on emotional autopilot. The problem. We repeat scripts and reactions for years without realizing they are choices. The trigger. A trigger is a hot button built on past insecurity. You must map your minefield. The depth. Move past the what to the why. Use the 5 why technique to find the root cause. The practice. Use forensic journaling and radical feedback to see your blind spots. The outcome. You move from being a victim of your moods to being the architect of your character. The mantra. Know your triggers, or they will control you. Chapter 5. Train your mind to stay unshaken. The fallacy of natural resilience. There is a common belief that mental toughness is a born trait, that some people are simply born with ice in their veins, while others are destined to be fragile. We look at the elite soldier, the surgeon operating under immense pressure, or the athlete who performs with surgical precision in the final seconds of a game, and we assume they were made that way. This is a convenient lie. It is a lie we tell ourselves because it gives us an excuse to stay where we are. It allows us to say, I'm just an emotional person, I wasn't born with that kind of grit. The truth is far more demanding. Mental toughness is not a gift, it is a forged result. A sword is not born sharp. It begins as a dull, raw piece of iron. To become a blade that can cut through stone without breaking, it must be put through a brutal process. It must be heated in a furnace until it glows with white heat. It must be slammed repeatedly by a heavy hammer. It must be plunged into ice-cold water to shock its atoms into a new, harder structure. Your mind is the iron. Life is the hammer. And this chapter is about the furnace. If you want to be the person who cannot be shaken, you must stop waiting for life to be easy and start training your mind to handle the hard. You must realize that mental toughness is not built in comfort. It is built through intentional discomfort and the relentless practice of self-control. The comfort trap, the enemy of the strong mind. We live in the most comfortable era in human history. We have climate-controlled rooms, food delivered to our doors with a tap on a screen, and endless entertainment to distract us from even a moment of boredom or minor anxiety. This comfort is a slow-acting poison for the mind. When your life is too comfortable, your stress threshold begins to drop. If you never experience physical hardship, a flight delay feels like a catastrophe. If you never face social rejection, a dislike on social media feels like a personal assault. If you never practice discipline, a minor change in your routine feels overwhelming. By insulating ourselves from discomfort, we have made ourselves emotionally fragile. We have no calluses on our character. When a real crisis hits, a health scare, a financial collapse, or a deep betrayal, we find that our mental muscles have atrophied. We crumble because we have never trained to stand. Mental toughness requires you to declare war on the comfort trap. You must become the person who voluntarily seeks out small, manageable doses of hardness every day. This is called stress inoculation. Stress inoculation, the vaccine for the mind. In medicine, a vaccine works by introducing a tiny, weakened version of a virus into the body. The immune system learns how to fight it in a controlled environment so that when the real, powerful virus arrives, the body is already prepared. It doesn't panic, it simply executes its defense. Mental toughness follows the exact same logic. You must vaccinate your mind against stress. If you want to stay calm when a client is screaming at you, you must first learn to stay calm when you are physically exhausted. If you want to stay focused during a financial crisis, you must first learn to stay focused when you are uncomfortable. This is why high performers often engage in intense physical training, cold exposure, or long periods of fasting. It isn't just about the body, it's about the brain. When you step into a freezing cold shower at 5 a.m., every fiber of your being is screaming NO. Your animal brain is panicking. By forcing yourself to stay in that water, to breathe slowly, and to keep your heart rate down, you are training your prefrontal cortex to override your impulses. You are telling your brain, I am in charge here, not my discomfort. Every time you do something difficult that you don't want to do, you are thickening the walls of your mental fortress. You are building the willpower muscle that you will eventually need when the stakes are high. The discipline of the unshaken routine. Training your mind to be unshaken requires a foundation of discipline. Discipline is the practice of doing what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Most people are feeling driven. If they feel motivated, they work. If they feel tired, they sleep. If they feel annoyed, they complain. They are like weather vanes, turning whichever way the wind of their emotions blows. A mentally tough person is value-driven. They have a set of standards and a routine that is non-negotiable. Why is a routine so important for emotional intelligence? Because it reduces decision fatigue. Every time you have to decide whether or not to work out, whether or not to eat healthy, or whether or not to focus on your deep work, you are draining your mental energy. By the time an emotional crisis hits in the afternoon, your tank is empty, and you are far more likely to react emotionally. A disciplined routine protects your emotional energy. It builds a sense of internal locus of control. When you keep the promises you make to yourself, even the small ones, you develop a deep, unshakable self-trust. You begin to believe that you are a person who can handle whatever comes your way because you have proven it to yourself every morning before 9 a.m. Training the arousal control. When we are under pressure, our arousal level, our physiological state of alertness, spikes. Our heart rate climbs, our breathing becomes shallow, and our field of vision narrows. This is great if you are fighting a bear. It is terrible if you are trying to make a logical decision. Mentally tough individuals practice arousal control. They learn to monitor the dial. Imagine your stress level is on a scale of 1 to 10. A level 1 is sleep. A level 10 is pure, blind panic. The golden zone for high performance is a 4 or 5. This is where you are alert and focused but calm. To stay unshaken, you must learn to notice when you are climbing from a 5 to a 7. Once you hit a 7 or 8, your emotional intelligence vanishes. You become reactive. Training your mind involves learning to pull yourself back down the scale in real time. This is done through tactical breathing. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. By manually slowing your breath, you send a signal to your brain that the danger has passed. You are training your nervous system to be elastic, to be able to snap back to calm immediately after a stressor. The pressure is a privilege mindset. To be unshaken, you must change your relationship with pressure. Most people view pressure as a burden. They see it as something to be avoided, a sign that things are going wrong. They say, "I can't wait until this is over so I can relax." The mentally tough person views pressure as a diagnostic tool. There is a core truth in the world of high performance. Pressure doesn't break strong minds, it reveals them. When you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. You don't get apple juice. Why? Because that's what was inside. When life squeezes you with pressure, whatever is inside you is what will come out. If you have cultivated anger, anger will come out. If you have cultivated fear, panic will come out. If you have cultivated discipline and emotional intelligence, then clarity and leadership will come out. Pressure is not what makes you fail, it simply exposes the cracks that were already there. Therefore, we should welcome pressure. It shows us where we need to do more work. It reveals the areas of our character that are still soft. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" the unshaken mind says, "Thank you for showing me where I am still weak, so I can become stronger." Practical exercises for training the mind. Here is how you can begin the furnace training today. 1. The non-negotiable task. Choose one task every day that you find difficult or annoying, something you usually procrastinate on. It could be making 5 cold calls, cleaning a cluttered space, or doing a 10-minute meditation. Commit to doing it at a specific time. No matter how you feel, no matter how tired you are, you must do it. This is training your mind to obey your will, not your emotions. 2. Voluntary discomfort, the 2-minute cold. At the end of your warm shower, turn the handle to all the way cold for 2 minutes. Don't dance around. Stand still. Breathe slowly through your nose. Watch the panic rise in your mind and refuse to give in to it. You are practicing arousal control in a safe environment. 3. The chaos simulation. When you are doing a difficult task, add a layer of distraction. Turn on loud, annoying music or sit in a crowded, noisy cafe. Force yourself to maintain your focus and your quality of work despite the external noise. This trains the brain to maintain its internal order when the external world is in chaos. 4. The worst-case visualization, pre-mortems. Once a week, sit for 10 minutes and imagine everything going wrong. Imagine the project fails, the relationship ends, or the deal falls through. Don't just think about it. Feel the anxiety it produces. Then, practice your calm. Imagine yourself responding with poise. Imagine yourself picking up the pieces. By rehearsing the disaster, you strip it of its power to shock you if it ever actually happens. The identity of the unshaken. As you train, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as a person who hopes for a good day. You start seeing yourself as a person who is prepared for any day. Being unshaken does not mean you are a statue. You will still feel the sting of loss. You will still feel the heat of anger. But because you have been in the furnace of intentional training, those emotions will no longer have the power to knock you off your feet. You have built a center of gravity so heavy that the world's storms can only move your hair, not your soul. You are no longer afraid of the pressure because you know the secret. The pressure isn't there to destroy you. It's there to show you how strong you've become. Pressure doesn't break strong minds, it reveals them. Summary of Chapter 5. The core truth: mental toughness is a forged trait, not a natural birthright. The comfort trap: convenience makes us emotionally fragile. We must seek stress inoculation. Discipline: a routine protects emotional energy and builds self-trust by doing what is required, not what is felt. Arousal control: using the breath to stay in the golden zone of performance, level 4 to 5 stress. The mantra: pressure is a diagnostic tool. It doesn't create your character, it reveals it. The practice: use voluntary discomfort, cold exposure, and worst-case visualizations to build resilience. Chapter 6. Stop seeking validation. The invisible leash. Imagine walking through your life with a thin, invisible leash around your neck. The end of that leash is not held by you. It is held by your boss, your co-workers, your parents, your social media followers, and even the strangers you pass on the street. Every time someone gives you a compliment, they pull the leash in a way that makes you stand taller. Every time someone ignores you or criticizes you, they yank the leash, pulling you down into a state of anxiety or self-doubt. You believe you are free agent, making your own moves and chasing your own goals, but in reality, you are puppet. Your emotional state is entirely dependent on the score other people are giving you. This is the validation trap. One of the greatest emotional weaknesses a human can possess is the chronic need for approval. When you depend on external validation to feel good enough, your emotions are no longer your own, they are hostages to the opinions of others. You have outsourced your self-worth to a committee of people who, quite frankly, are too busy worrying about their own problems to truly care about yours. Mental toughness and emotional intelligence require you to cut the leash. You must move from a life of external seeking to a life of internal standards. To become truly unshakable, you must reach the point where you are no longer a beggar for the world's applause. The evolutionary glitch. To stop seeking validation, we must first understand why we crave it so desperately. Like many of our emotional struggles, this begins in the old brain. For hundreds of thousands of years, human survival was entirely dependent on the tribe. If the tribe liked you, you shared the food and the protection of the fire. If the tribe disapproved of you, you were cast out into the wilderness to face the elements and the predators alone. In the ancestral environment, social rejection was a death sentence. Therefore, our brains evolved to view approval as a survival signal and disapproval as a danger signal. When someone critiques us today, our amygdala reacts as if we are about to be kicked out into the snow to die. But we no longer live in the ancestral environment. We live in a world where you can be criticized by 10,000 people on the internet and still be perfectly safe, fed, and housed. The death sentence of social disapproval is now a ghost, a biological glitch that triggers intense emotional pain without any actual threat to our survival. Mentally tough individuals recognize this glitch. They acknowledge the sting of rejection, but they refuse to let it dictate their identity. They understand that the tribe's opinion is often fickle, uninformed, and irrelevant to their mission. The hostage situation. Giving away your remote control. Think about the person who constantly seeks likes, comments, and affirmations. Every time they post something or complete a task, they are waiting for the external signal to tell them how to feel. If the response is positive, they feel a hit of dopamine. They are on top of the world. If the response is negative, or worse, if there is no response at all, they spiral. They feel worthless, unseen, or failed. By operating this way, you have handed over the remote control of your nervous system to the world. You have given everyone else the power to change your channel. If they want you to be sad, they just have to withhold praise. If they want you to be anxious, they just have to question your choices. Is that strength? Is that the mark of an elite character? No, it is the definition of fragility. True emotional intelligence teaches you to keep the remote control in your own hand. You must become the primary source of your own validation. You must reach a level of self-possession where your opinion of your work and your character carries more weight than the collective opinion of everyone else. Internal standards versus external metrics. High performers, the 1% who truly change the world, operate on internal standards. An elite athlete doesn't need the crowd to cheer to know if they had a good game. Often, they are their own harshest critic. They might win a championship and still be disappointed because they know they missed a specific read or failed to maintain their form. Conversely, they might lose a game but feel a sense of pride because they know they executed their training with 100% integrity and effort. When you have internal standards, you are playing a game of one. The validation seeker asks, did they like it? The mentally tough performer asks, did I meet my standard? Did I act with discipline? Did I give my best effort? Did I follow my code? If the answer to those internal questions is yes, then the world's criticism becomes background noise. It cannot penetrate the fortress of your self-respect. Approval is temporary. Self-respect is permanent. The 10% rule of disapproval. One of the most liberating truths you will ever learn is the 10% rule. No matter who you are, no matter how kind you are, and no matter how perfect your work is, at least 10% of the people you meet will not like you. For some, it will be 20% or 30%. People will dislike you for reasons that have nothing to do with you. They will dislike you because you remind them of someone they hate. They will dislike you because your success makes them feel insecure about their own laziness. They will dislike you because they are having a bad day and you are a convenient target. The validation seeker spends 90% of their energy trying to win over that 10% who will never like them. It is an exercise in futility. It is like trying to convince a brick wall to be a door. The mentally tough person accepts the 10%. They don't try to argue with it, fix it, or apologize for it. They simply say, "I am not for everyone," and they move on. They focus their energy on their mission and on the people who actually matter. When you stop trying to be liked by everyone, you gain the freedom to be respected by the right people, including yourself. Detaching from the attaboy. Validation seeking isn't just about avoiding criticism. It's also about the addiction to praise. Praise is a drug. It feels good, but it is dangerous because it creates a feedback loop where you start doing things only because you know they will be praised, rather than because they are the right things to do. This is how people pleasers are born. They slowly shave off the edges of their personality and compromise their values until they are a bland, harmless version of themselves, all in the pursuit of more attaboys. Mental toughness requires you to detach from the attaboy. You must learn to receive praise with a polite thank you, but you must not let it enter your blood. If you let the praise in, you will inevitably let the criticism in too. They are two sides of the same coin, other people's opinion. If you want to be unshakable, you must remain neutral to both. Whether they are throwing roses or throwing stones, you must keep walking. Your fuel must come from the internal fire of your purpose, not the external sparks of public opinion. How to build self-respect, the anti-validation routine. Self-respect is not something you find, it is something you earn through your own actions when no one is watching. Here is how you build an internal foundation that doesn't need external validation. 1. Keep small promises to yourself. The quickest way to lose self-respect is to lie to yourself. If you say you're going to wake up at 6 a.m. and you hit the snooze button, you have just told your subconscious that your word is worthless. When your word is worthless to you, you will naturally look to others to tell you that you are valuable. Mental toughness begins with integrity of self. Do what you said you would do. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you deposit self-respect into your internal bank account. 2. The private win. Seek out tasks that have no public reward. Do something difficult, excellent, or kind, and tell absolutely no one about it. By keeping the win private, you are training your brain to realize that the satisfaction comes from the act, not the applause. 3. Audit your why. Before you make a decision, ask yourself, would I still do this if I could never tell anyone I did it? If the answer is no, you are likely seeking validation. If the answer is yes, you are operating from your own internal compass. 4. Practice active disagreement. If you are a people pleaser, practice the micro-no. Start small. Disagree with a movie choice. Say no to an invitation you don't want to attend. Experience the sting of someone else's minor disappointment and realize that you survived. You are building the muscle of social independence. The freedom of being UN manipulatable. The most dangerous person to the system, whether that's a toxic workplace, a manipulative relationship, or a superficial society, is the person who does not need validation. When you don't need someone to like you, they have no power over you. You cannot be bullied into silence. You cannot be shamed into compliance. You cannot be bribed into mediocrity. You become a person of high character because your character is governed by a set of permanent internal principles, not a shifting set of external opinions. You become the alpha in the truest sense of the word, the individual who is the source of their own certainty. As we move toward Chapter 7, where we will discuss the art of strategic silence, remember that silence is only possible when you are comfortable in your own skin. The person who is constantly talking is often the person who is desperately seeking someone to agree with them. The person who is mentally tough can stay silent because they already have the only approval that matters, their own. Approval is temporary. Self-respect is permanent. Summary of Chapter 6. The leash. Seeking validation is handing the remote control of your emotions to other people. The biology. Our need for approval is an evolutionary glitch from our tribal past. It is no longer necessary for survival. Internal standards. High performers measure themselves by a personal code, not by likes or attaboys. The 10% rule. Accept that a percentage of people will always dislike you. Stop wasting energy on them. Detachment. Treat praise and criticism with the same neutrality. Don't let either enter your identity. The practice. Earn self-respect by keeping promises to yourself and achieving private wins. The mantra. Approval is temporary. Self-respect is permanent. Chapter 7. Master the art of strategic silence. The myth of the last word. We live in an age of noise. We are surrounded by a culture that tells us that to be strong is to be heard. We are encouraged to speak our truth, to clap back on social media, and to never let an insult go unanswered. We have been conditioned to believe that the person who gets the last word in an argument is the winner. But in the world of high-level emotional intelligence and mental toughness, the opposite is true. The person who feels the desperate need to speak, to explain themselves, or to defend their ego is the person who has lost control. Every time you react to a provocation with words, you are leaking energy. You are giving your opponent, whether that's a rival, a toxic family member, or a random critic, exactly what they want, your attention and your emotional involvement. True power is not found in the ability to speak. It is found in the discipline to remain silent. Strategic silence is the ultimate mark of self-possession. It is the realization that your words are a valuable currency, and you should not spend them on people or situations that do not deserve them. This chapter is about mastering the art of the void, learning how to use silence to gain leverage, diffuse conflict, and maintain your dignity in a world that can't stop talking. Not every attack deserves a response. The anxiety of the void. Why is silence so difficult for us? Why do we feel a physical itch to fill the air when there is a pause in a conversation, or an overwhelming urge to fire back when someone insults us? It comes down to emotional insecurity. Silence is a mirror. When the room goes quiet, we are forced to sit with our own thoughts and our own discomfort. Most people are terrified of what they might find in that quiet, so they talk to distract themselves. They talk to prove they are smart. They talk to prove they are right. They talk to mask their anxiety. When someone attacks you, they are creating a vacuum. They are throwing a hook into the water, hoping you will bite. If you remain silent, the vacuum remains. This creates an immense amount of psychological pressure on the other person. Because they cannot handle the silence, they will often begin to over-explain, backtrack, or reveal their own insecurities. By refusing to fill the void, you force the other person to confront themselves. Silence isn't just a lack of sound. It is a strategic wall that forces the opponent to play against their own shadow. Silence as a negotiation weapon. In the world of high-stakes business and negotiation, silence is the most effective tool for gaining the upper hand. Most amateur negotiators are terrified of dead air. When they make an offer or ask a question and the other side doesn't respond immediately, they start talking to break the tension. They might even lower their own price or offer concessions before the other person has even spoken. The professional understands the power of the pause. Imagine you are negotiating a contract. You state your terms. The other person looks at you and says nothing. A second passes. 5 seconds. 10. The weak mind panics. They think, oh no, they're angry. I should say something to fix this. They start babbling. Of course, we're flexible on the timeline, and we could look at the pricing again. They have just negotiated against themselves. The mentally tough mind sits comfortably in the silence. They maintain eye contact. They breathe. They understand that the person who speaks first after a proposal is usually the one who loses leverage. By staying silent, you signal that you are not desperate. You signal that you are comfortable with discomfort. This forces the other party to be the one who breaks, often leading them to offer more than they originally intended just to resolve the psychological tension you created. The grey rock method. Silence in conflict. In your personal life, you will inevitably encounter emotional vampires, people who thrive on drama, conflict, and getting a reaction out of you. This could be a narcissistic boss, a high-conflict relative, or an internet troll. These individuals feed on your emotional responses. If you get angry, they win. If you cry, they win. If you spend 3 hours explaining why they are wrong, they win, because they have successfully hijacked your time and energy. The mentally tough response to these people is called the grey rock method. You become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a grey rock on the ground. You don't argue. You don't defend. You don't explain. You respond with short, non-committal phrases. I see, okay, that's your perspective. Or, more powerfully, you respond with strategic silence. When a toxic person hurls an insult at you, and you simply look at them, pause for 3 seconds, and then go back to what you were doing, you have robbed them of their fuel. You have shown them that their attack didn't even register as a threat. You must realize that your explanation is a gift, and some people haven't earned the right to hear it. When you stop trying to win the argument, you win the war for your peace of mind. Remember, not every attack deserves a response. The leadership of listening. In any organization, the person who talks the most is rarely the one with the most power. True authority is quiet. Think of the most respected leader you know. When they enter a meeting, do they spend the first 30 minutes talking about their ideas? No, they listen. They ask a question, and then they disappear into silence. They allow everyone else to speak first. This serves 3 critical functions of emotional intelligence. Data collection. By staying silent, you gather all the information, observe the hidden agendas, and see the flaws in everyone else's logic before you ever open your mouth. Respect. Silence shows that you value the input of others. People feel heard when you are quiet, which builds immense loyalty. Wait. When the person who has been silent for 40 minutes finally speaks, their words carry 10 times the weight of the person who hasn't stopped talking. If you want your words to have power, you must give them rarity. If you talk constantly, your words are like pennies, abundant and cheap. If you speak rarely and with precision, your words are like diamonds. The discipline of the tongue, right versus effective. One of the hardest lessons in mental toughness is realizing that being right is often the lowest form of success. Your ego wants to be right. It wants to point out the flaw in your spouse's logic. It wants to prove to your coworker that they made a mistake. It wants to win the petty debate at the dinner table. But the emotionally intelligent person asks, is being right effective here? Will proving them wrong improve the relationship? No. Will it help us reach the goal faster? No. Will it make me a better person? No. Often, the most tough thing you can do is let someone else be wrong in peace. You observe the error, you realize it doesn't actually affect the mission, and you choose to stay silent. You save your energy for the things that actually matter. This requires a massive amount of ego control. It is the ability to swallow the retort that is sitting on the tip of your tongue and realize that your silence is more beneficial than your correction. Practical exercises for strategic silence. Mastering silence is a physical and mental discipline. It is a restraint of pen and tongue. Here is how you can train this skill. 1. The 5-second pause. In every conversation today, even the casual ones, make it a rule to wait 5 seconds before you respond to anything anyone says, even if you have the answer ready. This breaks the habit of impulsive talking and teaches you to be comfortable with the gap. It also makes you appear more thoughtful and confident. 2. The no defense challenge. The next time someone gives you unsolicited advice or minor criticism, do not defend yourself. Even if they are 100% wrong, just say, "Thanks for the feedback," and stay silent. Watch the ego panic rise in your chest as it screams for you to explain your side. Sit with that panic until it dies. You are training your mind that you don't need their agreement to be okay. 3. The digital read and delete. When you see something online or receive a text that makes you angry, type out your most vicious, brilliant, right response. Pour all your wit and rage into it. Then, Select all and hit delete. Do not send it. Realize that the act of writing it provided the emotional release you needed, and the act of deleting it maintained your power. You have successfully processed the emotion without giving the other person a piece of your life. 4. The question-only meeting. In your next meeting or social gathering, set a goal to only speak in questions. Do not make a single statement of your own opinion. This forces you into a state of deep listening and observation. You will be amazed at how much more you learn when you are not busy waiting for your turn to talk. The identity of the silent mountain. There is an old proverb, "The shallow brook babbles, the deep ocean is still." When you master strategic silence, you become like the ocean. People know that beneath your calm surface, there is an immense amount of depth and power, but they can't quite see the bottom. This creates a natural sense of respect and even a healthy touch of caution in others. They no longer see you as someone they can easily manipulate or rattle. Strategic silence is the ultimate boundary. It says, "I am in control of my energy. I decide who gets access to my thoughts. I do not react to every bark of every dog." As we move to Chapter 8, where we will discuss turning emotional pain into fuel, remember that the conversion of pain happens in the quiet. It doesn't happen while you are complaining or arguing. It happens when you are silent enough to hear what the pain is trying to teach you. Silence is not weakness. It is the ultimate expression of strength. Summary of Chapter 7. The concept. Silence is a strategic tool, not a lack of words. It creates leverage and maintains dignity. The void. Silence creates psychological pressure. The person who can handle the silence longest usually wins. Negotiation. Use the power of the pause to avoid negotiating against yourself. Conflict. Use the grey rock method and silence to rob toxic people of their emotional fuel. Leadership. Talking less and listening more increases the weight and value of your words. Ego control. Realize that being right is often less important than being effective. The mantra. Not every attack deserves a response. Chapter 8. Turn emotional pain into mental fuel. The universal constant of pain. In the pursuit of a great life, there is one thing you can never avoid: pain. It doesn't matter how high your IQ is, how much money you have in the bank, or how carefully you have planned your future. Pain is the universal constant. You will be rejected by someone you love. You will fail at a project you poured your heart into. You will be criticized by people who don't understand your vision. You will lose things that are precious to you. Most people view emotional pain as a signal to stop. They treat it like a wound that needs to be pampered, protected, and hidden away. They spend their lives trying to avoid the sting, and when it inevitably arrives, they collapse under its weight. They become victims of their own history, allowing their past hurts to dictate their future limitations. But the mentally tough person, the individual with high emotional intelligence, views pain through a completely different lens. They don't see pain as a reason to quit. They see it as high-octane fuel. They understand a fundamental law of psychological physics. Pain is energy, and like any form of energy, it cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed. You can either let that energy burn you from the inside out, or you can channel it into the engine of your ambition. You can let the fire consume you, or you can use it to forge a stronger version of yourself. Pain can weaken you, or it can sharpen you. The alchemy of the hurt. To turn pain into fuel, we must first change our relationship with negative emotions. In Chapter 1, we learned that emotions are data. In this chapter, we learn that painful emotions are raw materials. Think of a blacksmith. When they want to create a legendary blade, they don't look for soft, room temperature metal. They look for iron that is glowing with intense heat. The heat makes the metal malleable. The heat is what allows the hammer to reshape the structure of the iron. Emotional pain, the sting of failure, the burn of rejection, the cold weight of grief, is your heat. When you are in pain, your psychological structure is more malleable than at any other time. You are open. This is the moment when you have the greatest opportunity to rewrite your internal code. If you are comfortable, you have no reason to change. If you are satisfied, you have no reason to grow. It is only when the status quo becomes painful that the human spirit finds the leverage necessary to make a quantum leap. Pain is the evolutionary kick that moves you from where you are to where you need to be. Rejection as a refining fire. Let's look at one of the most common forms of emotional pain, rejection. Whether it's a no from a potential investor, a breakup in a relationship, or being passed over for a promotion, rejection feels like a personal assault on our value. The weak mind hears no and interprets it as you are not enough. They retreat into their shell, they stop taking risks, and they allow the rejection to become a permanent scar on their self-esteem. The mentally tough mind hears no and performs a conversion. They say, "This rejection is a gift. It has just narrowed my focus. It has shown me exactly where my pitch was weak, or it has removed a person from my life who was not aligned with my future." They take the sting of that rejection, the embarrassment and the frustration, and they use it to power their next 10 hours of work. They use the "I'll show them" energy not out of petty spite, but as a source of relentless drive. They don't waste time crying over the closed door. They use the adrenaline of the hurt to find the axe and chop down a new one. High performers are often rejection junkies. They seek out the no because they know that every no is a sharpening stone for their character. They understand that the person who has been rejected 1,000 times and kept going is infinitely more dangerous than the person who has always been told yes. Failure as a data harvest. Failure is the pain of unfulfilled expectations. It is the gap between where you thought you'd be and where you actually are. When you fail, your ego wants to protect you by making excuses. It wants to blame the economy, the timing, or the unfair competition. This is a tragedy, because when you blame others, you lose the fuel of the failure. You throw away the raw materials of your growth. Mental toughness requires you to own the pain of failure. You must sit in the middle of the wreckage and ask, what did I do to cause this? By taking 100% responsibility for the failure, the pain becomes constructive. It becomes a map. You realize that the failure wasn't a wall, it was a guardrail telling you that you were off track. The burn of the mistake ensures that you will never make that specific mistake again. Think of the entrepreneur whose first 3 businesses failed. Most people would quit after the first one, citing emotional exhaustion. But the mentally tough entrepreneur uses the pain of the first 3 to ensure the 4th is an unstoppable success. The pain of the past failures is what gives them the grit to survive the dark days of the new venture. They are powered by their history, not haunted by it. Criticism. The free consulting session. Nothing causes emotional leakage quite like criticism. When someone attacks our work or our character, our natural impulse is to get defensive or to get hurt. However, if you have high emotional intelligence, you realize that criticism is simply unfiltered data. Most people are too polite to tell you the truth to your face. Your critics, however, will tell you exactly where your weaknesses are for free. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it stings. But that sting is the signal of where you are still soft. If someone says your presentation was boring, you can either be hurt and complain about their rudeness, or you can take the heat of that embarrassment and use it to study public speaking for 3 hours every night for a month. When you use criticism as fuel, your critics accidentally become your greatest coaches. They think they are pulling you down, but they are actually providing the resistance you need to build more muscle. The mechanism of conversion. How to do it. Turning pain into fuel is not a metaphor, it is a practical mental process. Here is the 3-step mechanism for emotional conversion. Step 1. Acknowledge and feel, the EQ phase. Do not tough it out by pretending it doesn't hurt. That is suppression, and it's weak. If you lose a deal, say, "This hurts. I feel angry, and I feel like I've let myself down." By acknowledging the pain, you capture the energy. You cannot use fuel that you haven't put into the tank. Feel the full weight of the sting. Let it burn. Step 2. The radical what for. The shift phase. Stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" That is the question of a victim. Ask, "What is this for? Is this pain for my discipline? Is this pain for my humility? Is this pain to show me that I'm in the wrong career? Is this pain to make me so hungry for success that I never settle for mediocrity again?" Step 3. Directional action, the toughness phase. Once you identify the what for, you must move immediately. Do not sit in the pain for too long or it will turn into rot. If you are hurt by a breakup, go to the gym right now. Use that heart-heavy energy to lift more than you ever have. If you are frustrated by a professional setback, open your laptop right now. Use that rage to finish the task you've been putting off. Action is the only way to vent the pressure of emotional pain into productive work. If you don't move, the pain becomes suffering. If you move, the pain becomes progress. Post-traumatic growth. In psychology, there is a well-known concept called post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. But there is a much less discussed counterpart, post-traumatic growth, PTG. PTG is the phenomenon where individuals who experience a deep trauma or emotional shattering actually end up with a higher level of functioning than they had before the event. They develop a deeper sense of meaning, a greater appreciation for life, and an unshakable core of mental toughness. The shattering of their old self allowed them to rebuild a new self that is stronger, more resilient, and more focused. This is the ultimate expression of turning pain into fuel. They didn't just get over it. They became because of it. You must decide today that you will be a practitioner of post-traumatic growth. You must decide that no matter how hard life hits you, you will take the debris of that impact and use it to build a skyscraper. The identity of the alchemist. When you master this chapter, you lose your fear of the bad days. Most people are terrified of failure and rejection. They spend their lives playing it safe because they don't want to feel bad. But when you know how to turn pain into fuel, you are no longer afraid of feeling bad. In fact, you realize that the bad days are often your most productive days. You become like a high-performance engine that can run on any grade of fuel. Give you success, and you use it for confidence. Give you pain, and you use it for drive. Give you betrayal, and you use it for self-reliance. Give you failure, and you use it for wisdom. Nothing can stop a person who knows how to weaponize their own hurts. The world tries to break you, and you simply use the pieces to sharpen your spear. You become a person who is anti-fragile. You don't just survive the stress, you thrive on it. As we move toward Chapter 9, where we will discuss the power of controlled detachment, remember that you can only detach from the noise when you are fully powered by your own internal fuel. The next time you feel the sting of life, don't ask for it to stop. Take a deep breath, feel the burn, and say, "Thank you for the fuel. Now, watch what I do with it." Pain can weaken you, or it can sharpen you. Summary of Chapter 8. The concept. Pain is energy. It cannot be avoided, so it must be transformed into motivation and clarity. The furnace. High performers use the heat of emotional pain to reshape their character and rewrite their internal code. Rejection. See no as a gift that refines your focus and builds grit. Failure. Own the pain 100% so you can harvest the data and ensure future success. Criticism. Use the sting of critique as a free consulting session to find your soft spots. The process. Acknowledge the pain, ask "what is this for?" and move immediately into directional action. The identity. Become anti-fragile. The more the world tries to break you, the stronger you become. The mantra. Pain can weaken you, or it can sharpen you. Chapter 9. The power of controlled detachment. The difference between the wall and the shield. In our journey through mental toughness, we often encounter a dangerous misunderstanding. People hear the word detachment and they think of a cold, unfeeling robot. They think of the wall, an impenetrable barrier of indifference where you simply stop caring about anything or anyone. But indifference is not strength. 1. Indifference is a form of emotional death. It is an escape. When you are indifferent, you have checked out of the game of life because you are too afraid to play. Controlled detachment is something entirely different. It is not the wall, it is the shield. Controlled detachment is the ability to care deeply about your mission, your family, and your craft, while remaining utterly detached from the noise that surrounds them. It is the art of being fully engaged in the fight but completely uncoupled from the drama, the petty grievances, and the emotional manipulation of others. It is the realization that while you are in the world, you do not have to be of its chaos. The mentally tough person is a detached professional. They want to win more than anyone else, but they have reached a level of maturity where they no longer allow their internal peace to be dictated by external variables they cannot control. Care about your mission. Detach from the noise. The athlete's bubble, focusing on the process. 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at the elite performers at the highest level of sport. During the Olympic Games, you will see gymnasts or swimmers wearing massive noise-cancelling headphones right up until the moment they compete. In interviews, they call this staying in the bubble. What are they doing? They are practicing controlled detachment. 6. They know that the stadium is filled with thousands of people. They know that millions are watching on TV. They know that their competitors are posting record-breaking scores just a few feet away. If they allowed themselves to attach to that information, if they let the crowd's expectations or their rival's success enter their minds, their focus would shatter. Their muscles would tighten with anxiety. Instead, they detach from the outcome and the environment, and they attach exclusively to the process. The gymnast isn't thinking about the gold medal. She is thinking about the placement of her hands on the vault. The swimmer isn't thinking about the world record. He is thinking about the rhythm of his breath. They have detached from the noise, the results, the fame, the pressure, so they can fully care about the mission, the execution of the next 10 seconds. This is the secret of the unshakable mind. You must become obsessed with your own performance and completely bored by the world's opinion of it. Detached engagement. The F***ck it factor. 7. There is a fascinating concept in high-performance psychology called detached engagement. It sounds like a contradiction, but it is the key to entering the flow state. Think about a job interview. If you want the job too much, if you are attached to getting the offer, you will be nervous. You will overthink your answers. You will stumble over your words because you are terrified of failing. Your attachment has made you weak. Now, imagine you go into that same interview with a detached mindset. You still care about being professional. You still prepared for 3 days. You still want to do your best. But you have told yourself, if I get it, great. If I don't, I'll find something else. It doesn't define my worth. Ironically, because you have detached from the result, you perform better. You are relaxed. You are witty. You are present. This is what some athletes call the F***ck it factor. 7. It's the ability to say, I've done the work. Now I'm just going to play. The score will take care of itself. In your life, you must learn to care without clinging. Give 100% effort to your goals, but do not let your identity be crushed if the world doesn't give you the result you wanted today. Care about your mission. Detach from the noise. Navigating the swamp of drama. The greatest thief of human potential is drama. Drama is the emotional noise of other people's insecurities. It is the office gossip. It is the family feud that has been running for 10 years. It is the internet outrage of the day. It is the friend who always has a crisis and expects you to drop everything to save them. The weak mind gets hooked by drama. 6. They feel a need to take a side. They feel a need to defend themselves against a rumor. 6. They spend hours replaying conversations in their head, wondering why did she say that? Or how could they be so unfair? The emotionally intelligent person recognizes that drama is a sinkhole. The more you struggle with it, the deeper you sink. Controlled detachment allows you to see the drama and choose not to enter it. 6. Imagine you are walking through a swamp. The mud, the drama, is thick and dark. You can see it. You can even acknowledge that it's there. But you don't jump in and start wrestling with the mud. You stay on the path. You keep your eyes on the dry land ahead. When someone tries to pull you into an emotional conflict that doesn't serve your mission, you must have the toughness to say, that's not my storm to weather. You can be empathetic without being infected. 1, 6, 8, 9, 10. You can listen to a colleague's complaint without letting their negativity ruin your afternoon. You are a closed system. You choose which emotions you allow into your sanctuary. The 90-second rule of emotional independence. How do we actually perform this detachment in real time? Neuroscientist Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor discovered that when a person has an emotional reaction, there is a chemical process that happens in the body which lasts for exactly 90 seconds. From the moment the trigger happens to the moment the chemicals are flushed out of your bloodstream, a minute and a half passes. After those 90 seconds, if you are still feeling the emotion, it is because you have chosen to keep it alive by attaching to it with your thoughts. You are looping the story in your mind. Controlled detachment is the practice of observing the 90 seconds. You feel the surge of anger or negativity. 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. You look at your watch internally. You say, "This is a chemical surge. It will be gone in 90 seconds. You don't think about why you're angry. You don't defend your position. You just watch the chemicals pass. By the time the 90 seconds are up, you are free. You have detached from the impulse. You can now return to your mission with a clear head. The noise tried to enter, but you let it pass through like wind through a screen door. Detaching from negativity, the audit of influence. To protect your mental toughness, you must perform a strategic audit of your influences. Every person you spend time with, every social media account you follow, and every news outlet you consume is either signal, helpful data for your mission, or noise, distraction, fear, and negativity. If you are constantly attached to a news feed that makes you feel anxious and powerless, you are sabotaging your own character. If you are attached to a group of friends who complain about their lives without ever trying to change them, their emotional gravity will eventually pull you down. Controlled detachment means being ruthless with your attention. You detach from the outrage machine of the internet. You detach from one-sided relationships that drain your energy. 6, 11. You detach from the need to stay informed on things that you have zero power to change. 11. By cutting off the noise, you create a mental vacuum that can only be filled by things that matter: your growth, your goals, and your peace. Care about your mission. Detach from the noise. The freedom of the UN manipulatable mind. The ultimate goal of controlled detachment is to become UN manipulatable. If you are attached to your ego, people can manipulate you with insults. If you are attached to your status, people can manipulate you with threats. If you are attached to being liked, people can manipulate you with guilt. But when you are detached, when you have decided that your mission is the only thing that deserves your emotional investment, you become a nightmare for manipulators. They try to push your buttons, only to find that you have removed the buttons entirely. They try to guilt trip you, but you are already miles down the road toward your goal. You become like a captain of a ship in a storm. The waves are crashing, the wind is howling, and the crew is shouting. The captain sees it all. He hears it all. But he is detached from the panic. He is attached only to the compass and the wheel. He knows that his only job is to get the ship to the harbor. Everything else is just weather. The identity of the mission-focused. As we move toward the final chapter of this book, I want you to adopt the identity of the mission-focused observer. Ask yourself every morning, what is my mission today? Maybe it's to be the best parent you can be. Maybe it's to close a deal. Maybe it's just to maintain your peace of mind for 8 hours. Once you have defined the mission, anything that does not contribute to it is noise. When someone cuts you off in traffic, ask, is this part of the mission? No. Then detach. When a stranger leaves a mean comment on your post, ask, is this part of the mission? No. Then detach. By narrowing your emotional focus to your mission, you become incredibly efficient. You no longer waste hours on petty arguments. You no longer lose sleep over what someone thinks of you. You are a laser, and a laser only works because it has detached from every other wavelength of light to focus on a single point. Care about your mission. Detach from the noise. Summary of Chapter 9. The concept: controlled detachment is the shield, not the wall. It's caring about the mission while ignoring the drama. The bubble. High performers stay in their bubble by focusing on the process and ignoring the crowd. Detached engagement. Letting go of the need for a specific result often leads to a better performance. 2. The 90-second rule. Emotions are temporary chemical surges. Don't attach to them with thoughts, and they will pass. The audit. Ruthlessly detach from news, social media, and people who provide only noise. The outcome. You become UN manipulatable because you have no emotional buttons for others to push. The mantra. Care about your mission. Detach from the noise. Chapter 10. Become the person who cannot be shaken. The birth of a new character. We have reached the final stage of our journey. Over the previous 9 chapters, we have dismantled the myths of cold toughness, mapped the internal minefields of our triggers, learned the power of the 3-second pause, and discovered how to weaponize our pain into fuel. But this book was never just about a collection of techniques. It wasn't just a manual for better negotiation or a guide to staying calm in traffic. The goal of this process has always been something much more profound: the total transformation of your character. There is a version of you that currently exists, a version that is likely still a bit reactive, still a bit prone to seeking validation, and still occasionally a victim of its own moods. And then, there is the version of you that we have been building. This new version is the unshakable individual. When emotional intelligence meets mental toughness, a new level of human character emerges. It is the marriage of water and fire. You have the fluidity, empathy, and self-awareness of EQ, water, but you have the resilience, discipline, and uncompromising edge of mental toughness, fire. This final chapter is about stepping into that identity. It is about becoming the person who doesn't just survive the chaos of the world, but the person who stands in the center of the storm and says, "I am the one who decides how this ends." You are not controlled by emotions. You command them. The eye of the storm, calm under pressure. The hallmark of the unshakable person is their relationship with chaos. Most people are reactive reflectors. When the environment becomes chaotic, they become chaotic. When the pressure rises, their volume rises. When the deadline approaches, their anxiety becomes a palpable vibration that everyone else can feel. They are like a small boat on a rough sea. Their state of mind is entirely dependent on the height of the waves. The unshakable person is the anchor. Imagine a crowded emergency room during a multi-car accident. People are shouting, monitors are beeping, and blood is on the floor. In the middle of that chaos stands a senior trauma surgeon. Their movements are not fast or frantic. They are deliberate and precise. Their voice is not loud, it is clear and steady. While everyone else is vibrating with the energy of the disaster, the surgeon is a cool spot in a hot room. This is not because they don't care. It is because they know that their calm is the only thing that will save lives. They have reached a level of character where they realize that emotional intensity is the enemy of effective execution. When you become unshakable, you become the cool spot in your own life. When the bank account is low, you don't panic, you strategize. When a relationship is failing, you don't spiral, you observe and address. When the world is shouting, you find your silence. You realize that your internal state is a sanctuary that no external event has the permission to enter without your consent. The commander, disciplined when emotions rise. To be unshakable means you have finally ended the civil war inside your own mind. For most of your life, there has been a battle between your feeling self and your thinking self. Your feelings wanted to stay in bed, while your thoughts knew you should work out. Your feelings wanted to snap back at an insult, while your thoughts knew you should stay silent. Your feelings wanted to quit, while your thoughts knew you should endure. In the weak mind, the feeling self is the king. The thoughts are merely advisors who are constantly ignored. In the unshakable mind, the commander has taken the throne. The commander is the part of you that integrates both EQ and toughness. The commander listens to the feeling self. It hears the fear, the exhaustion, and the anger, but it never takes orders from them. When you are unshakable and an emotional surge hits, you don't fight the emotion. You acknowledge it. You say, "I hear you, fear. I see you, anger. Thank you for the data." And then you execute the mission anyway. This is the ultimate discipline, the ability to act in direct opposition to your temporary feelings because your permanent values demand it. You are no longer a mood-based person. You are a mission-based person. If you said you were going to do it, you do it, whether you feel like a lion or a wounded bird. The emotion is irrelevant to the execution. You are not controlled by emotions. You command them. The power of certainty in an uncertain world. Why are people so drawn to the unshakable person? Why do they get the promotions, the leadership roles, and the respect of their peers? It is because of certainty. We live in a world of profound uncertainty. People are desperate for something, or someone, that feels solid. Most people are drifters. They are constantly checking the social wind to see how they should feel or what they should believe. When you become unshakable, you project a level of internal certainty that is magnetic. Because you are not seeking validation, Chapter 6, and because you are detached from the noise, Chapter 9, you have a fixed point inside of you. When you speak with the weight of someone who has already mastered themselves. When you stay silent, your silence feels like strength, not empty space. You become the person who can look at a terrifying situation and say, "We will figure this out," and because you believe it, everyone else believes it too. Your mental toughness becomes a public service. By being unshakable, you give the people around you permission to be steady. Your calm is contagious. The daily life of the unshakable. How does an unshakable person actually live? It's not about grand gestures on a battlefield. It's about the small mastery of every single hour. Morning, they start with discipline, not distraction. They don't check their phone, the noise, the moment they wake up. They check their internal instrument panel. They set their thermostat for the day before the world has a chance to mess with it. Midday, when the inevitable hits come, the stressful call, the missed deadline, they employ the 3-second pause. They observe the surge, they label the data, and they choose a strategic response. They do not leak energy on petty grievances. Evening, they perform the forensic audit. They look back at where they lost their cool and where they stayed steady. They treat their failures as fuel and their successes as data. Socially, they are the grey rock to drama and the anchor to those in need. They listen more than they talk. They don't defend their ego because they have nothing to prove. The unshakable person is not a perfect person. They still feel the sting. The difference is that the sting doesn't change their trajectory. They are like a massive freighter ship. A small wave might hit the hull, but the ship doesn't even tilt. It stays on its course to the destination. The final identity shift, from doing to being. In the beginning of this book, you were doing mental toughness. You were trying to be emotionally intelligent. You were practicing the steps. But as you reach this final chapter, the doing must become being. This is the shift from a skill set to an identity. A person who is trying to be tough is still vulnerable because they are performing a role. They can be shaken out of that role if the pressure is high enough. A person who is unshakable cannot be shaken because there is no other version of them. Their composure is not a tactic, it is their fundamental nature. You must reach the point where you say, "I am a person who stays calm under pressure. I am a person who values self-respect over approval. I am a person who commands my own mind." Once you adopt this identity, the hard things become easier. It is no longer a struggle to stay silent during an argument. It is simply what a person like you does. It is no longer a struggle to work out when you're tired. It is simply who you are. The unending forge. As we conclude, remember this: mental toughness and emotional intelligence are not a destination. They are a lifestyle. You don't finish being unshakable. The world will always find new ways to test you. Life will find bigger hammers and hotter fires. You will face challenges in the next year that you cannot even imagine today. But that is the beauty of it. Every new challenge is just another opportunity to prove your command. Every new crisis is a chance to show the world, and more importantly, to show yourself, that you have built a character that cannot be broken. You have the tools now. You have the awareness to see the triggers. You have the pause to break the reaction. You have the silence to maintain the power. You have the fuel to turn pain into progress. You have the detachment to ignore the noise. The only thing left is to live it. The final mantra. Walk out into the world today with your head high and your heart steady. When the chaos rises, look it in the eye and smile. When the fear speaks, listen to its data and then tell it to take a seat. When the noise of the world tries to drown out your purpose, turn up the volume of your own internal code. You are the master of your internal ship. You are the architect of your own character. You are the one who decides how you feel, how you react, and who you become. The world cannot shake you unless you give it the remote control. And today, you are throwing that remote control into the ocean. You are calm. You are focused. You are disciplined. You are not controlled by emotions. You command them. Summary of Chapter 10. The Identity. The unshakable individual is the merger of EQ, self-awareness, and mental toughness, discipline. The anchor. In a chaotic world, the person with the most composure holds the most power. The commander. End the civil war between feelings and thoughts. Listen to emotions, but take orders from values. Certainty. Your internal stability becomes a magnetic force for leadership and influence. The shift. Move from practicing skills to embodying an identity. The forge. Understand that training never ends. Life is a continuous series of opportunities to test your command. The final mantra. You are not controlled by emotions, you command them.